to fill, and what fill by ID. So the word fill is kind of strange, but whenever a table adapter fills data, it takes the data set to put it into, and in this case, because it's by ID, it needs to also know the ID of the record that it's going to pull out of the database. And when it's all done, this sandwich data set will contain the one record that matches that particular ID. Does that kind of make sense? Now, we have to skip. It's a good thing this is being recorded, huh? Because y'all can watch it later when you're more awake and it'll make more sense. Let me find my data set here real quick. Table adapter, is that the right one? Yep. There we go. Do you guys remember this? Okay. So I actually wrote this fill by ID. I don't know if you can see it. It's this last one here. And here's the way we did that. I can take a query from over here and drag it into my table adapter, and it will then walk me through the process of how to write a new query. Now, in this case, my query required one piece of information, the ID of the record we wanted to pull, right? Because that's what we had stored in the previous screen. But let's pretend I wanted to pull a sandwich by name. That should be fine too, right? So if you walk through the query configuration wizard, you can see there's only one option here, use SQL statements. We're going to say use a select, which returns rows, because I want all the data in that row about that sandwich. And then we can come over here, and this is actually the SQL statement that will get executed. And what I did was, so a few people have had databases, right? So we can go with the where clause. I can add in at the end where
Sandwich name.
Sandwich name equals, and I can just leave a question mark right there.
You're going to specify what it's going to be.
Exactly. And then what that means is I'll tell it at runtime, I'll pass in a parameter of the sandwich name to use when it looks up the data. Without this where statement, does anybody have any idea about how many records will it return?
All of them.
All of them. It will return every record in there. So I have to sort of narrow my return set by specifying something about the records I want. So I can say where the sandwich name equals question mark. Now here's where I get to name my method. That, by the way, that's the word filled by, even though it's really small. And I'm going to call this, what do you think, last one I called fill by ID, which filled by name seems like a perfectly good thing to put in there. Get data by name. And of course there's an error. There's just like find problems, cannot find. Oh, I couldn't find my database. Well, it still created it even though it found a problem with it. And you can see if you hover over here, this fill by ID says all the same stuff where the ID equals question mark. And all that means is in this function I'm going to run, fill by ID, I have to pass in some piece of data. By doing this, I'm going to get a data set filled with the correct record. And the cool thing is, and I know you'll think this is cool too, because I drug all of these controls, not from like making them text boxes, right? I drug them from over here. You know what I'm talking about, right? They automatically become bound to that data set that's on the form. So literally without any other magic, remember how normally if we had a sandwich name, we'd have to like on loads say sandwich name, txt sandwich name dot text equals something, right? And then when you want to save it, you want to take that out of there and put it someplace else. But now, simply by using those data-bound controls, if I click on Pilgrim's Delight and run, it automatically filled in the data because the data set was already given to the form, all of those controls were already bound, and they knew which one they should display. I thought that was pretty cool. Just that one line of code. So I went from the first form, where I had the hidden record over here, and whenever I clicked on anything, basically it would just load up all the details. So the Scooby, I must not have anything about. So it'd be really nice if we could save that data then, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be cool? So if I came over here and I called this the Dagwood, and I said it is ham and turkey and bacon on Swiss, and I click save, notice down here it automatically saved it. How do you suppose that happened? How, you ask? Well, let's look. Notice I have, what event did where did I click to save that data?
Your save button.
My save button. So let's find out what's behind the save button. Okay, so what I say is, if the rec ID is greater than 0, meaning that I came in with a valid record, right? Then all I do is I say the binding source end edit. What that means is I'm now telling my binding source, okay, any edits that you think you might have, we're gonna stop right now, and then I just need to say sandwich table adapter dot update and pass in the data set. Somehow, magically, these text fields have communicated with the data set and updated the data set's value so that all I have to do is tell the data adapter to do an update. And at that point, the data is pushed all the way back out to the database and saved, and then I just close the form. It's like magic, I'm telling you.
The else statement, dude.
The else statement, right here? Well, I'll show you. Because the other thing I added here was the ability to add a record. So if I add a record, what do you think my rec ID is going to be? Do I have a rec ID from the database?
Not until you click save.
Right, so I don't have anything. So I'd said, well, the rec ID is going to be 0. Okay? So what I did is I coded these conditions in such a way that this is basically if I'm saving an existing record, and this one is if I'm adding a new one. But you ran on ahead before I could explain that. So
We tend to do that apparently.
I know. Well, let's look here. What do you think the cancel button here would do?
It closes it without running any updates.
Yeah, it actually ends the edit, which is just something we do when we're done editing, and then it closes it without doing this table adapter.update, which basically throws out any changes you have. And then delete, notice the delete button here, it would run this delete query by ID, which I wrote, which says, if we look at it, oops, I don't want to do that, hold on. Let's see, configure. Come on. Configure. Can you guys figure out what that would do?
It takes whatever record via ID that you're looking at and says, oh, I don't want it anymore. Goodbye.
So this is SQL, and you're going to see a little bit of this in this class. The question mark, again, is the what?
Rec ID you pass in.
The rec ID that we're going to pass in. And then we have this statement that says delete from the sandwich table where the ID field equals whatever we passed in. And at that point, we will have deleted it, just by running that query, we'll have deleted it from the database. We don't need to end edit or do any update, because as soon as we execute that delete query, the record's gone. There's no undo. You can't get it back. It's gone.
You gotta edit yourself.
So if we come in here and we edit this and we say delete record, it's gone, right? Now there was one other thing I had to do to get the two forms to talk properly. And that was, notice here's my show dialog, right? That's what popped up the second form, and it transferred all program control to the second form. So when does this execute? When will this statement execute?
When you clone it.
When that form is done being shown, it will then move on here, and notice what it does again. It does a